Chapter 384, The 9 Keys, 2. 3. Gather the 9 keys. At that declaration, I tilted my head. What keys are you talking about? I'll explain. As the lady snapped her fingers, an image appeared as if embroidered with platinum thread over a flowing sand waterfall. The image, at a glance, resembled the cross-section of an ant hill, or like a tree with countless roots spreading out. This is... Yes. Screaming Sky. It's a cross-section of your tower. Looks quite different when you see it like this, doesn't it? Indeed, it was a map of the tower, displayed laterally layer by layer. Even when I was a newbie hunter, maps of the initial layers were circulated among hunters, and recently, the Black Dragon Guild and the 10,000 Temple had collaborated on mapping, so I recognized it immediately. The lady smiled broadly, holding a baton in her hand. I'll skip the basement one, where Screaming Sky was called before, and the ground floor, where Screaming Sky's hometown is, and start from there. The tip of the baton lightly poked the first floor of the tower drawn on the flowing sand. The first floor is the refuge. Refuge. Forward base. Stronghold. Shelter, etc. Many terms could apply, but the most fitting term is that. It's a place that allows people who have fled from something to catch their breath. At least, it's a breakwater that ensures they won't be bothered by those things anymore. Swoosh, the baton moved sideways, tearing through the first floor lengthwise. The city of Babylon in the tower. The baton lightly pressed on a simulated map of the large river flowing through Babylon. Water flows here. Rain falls. The composition of that water. Anyway, that water contains some nutrients. It's colorless and odorless, but you can survive just by drinking it. But, people who feel that's not enough to feel alive. Swoosh. The tip of the baton moved against the sand, pointing to the second floor of the tower. You can choose to become a warrior. The lady's baton swept here and there across the second floor, from trees placed all over. You can obtain fruits, timber, from rocks, stone, ores, from grasses, herbs, wild vegetables. You can defeat monsters like wolves or goblins and obtain meat, leather, items, gold. Yes, I know. Yes. Screaming Sky has also walked that path. But... The lady tilted her head. Was this really necessary? It was a sudden question. But in some sense, it was also a very old question. Couldn't they just give everything away? Whether fruits, timber, ores, herbs, or meat. Wouldn't it be enough to just give out whatever people asked for? What do you think, Screaming Sky? I fell into thought. It wasn't without reason. The question the lady had just raised was one that many people had repeatedly harbored in their minds in the early days of pioneering the tower. This was one of the reasons why pseudo-religions related to the tower never ceased, as Bambolina had talked about. I said. Perhaps it was due to a lack of resources. To infinitely provide for everyone's food, clothing, and shelter, that would indeed require vast resources. So, inevitably. As I thought that far, I realized something. While looking at the lady, I said with a sigh. Indeed. Is it intentional? At that, the lady smiled slightly. Pressing my forehead hard, I said. I'm not yet a complete pillar, so I'm not sure, but if I were to answer. Thus, the lady's smile deepened. It seemed she meant for me to answer as one who would eventually manage the tower. The tower master wishes to be seen as the root of all evil. By deliberately placing threats such as monsters and urging trials, the tower master can be blamed for not unconditionally saving everyone, even though they could have. No. No. This is too ideological of a reason. There must be a more tangible reason. Perhaps it's because having a visible enemy allows people who have fled to the tower to unite? This doesn't seem quite right either. Then, the lady stood with her hands clasped behind her back, looking at me. She was willing to wait as long as necessary. After a long thought, I spoke honestly. I'm not sure, lady. Why is it? If the lady began like that. Before your world got as hot as it is now. I mean, if Bei Hurayong had been born in your country during the time when only you were raised by the orphanage director, what would have happened? I glanced at Bei Hurayong. Looking at Bei Hurayong, who was snorting with his arms crossed, the answer naturally flowed out. A lunatic. And? A thug? Gym owner, maybe a martial artist? Wouldn't it be about that? Right. The lady nodded. He might have gone abroad to become a mercenary, but that's probably all it would be. Nothing more, nothing less. But screaming sky. What if the Sword Emperor had been born in the ancient times? I glanced at the Sword Emperor. The answer also naturally flowed out. He would have been a hero. Not a king? What king? What laws would that guy make? How would he govern? People might have adored him enough to form a country, but after the Sword Emperor's death, it would have likely fractured into chaos. It might even have happened while he was still alive. Exactly. The lady laughed, hands still behind her back. Gently, she scuffed the pile of sand that had accumulated on the floor with the tip of her foot. But living as a martial artist would have been a much more fulfilling life, from the Sword Emperor's perspective. That's true. Such a world. Such an era, the era of warriors that ended long ago. In a place where sword-wielding heroes gave way to gun-carrying legions, how would a character like the Sword Emperor be treated? An obstacle. A lone wolf. A madman. A social misfit. The Sword Emperor himself wouldn't care at all. That would be the case. If anyone pitied him, he would look at that person as if they were insane. That would have been the case. But is that really a fair world for the Sword Emperor? Still somehow. It hurt a little, like watching the corpse of a dinosaur rotting at the same pace as a decaying mountain. One can only hold so much because a person's capacity is limited. To gain something, one must let go of other possibilities. Society too must continuously discard something to grow. Every civilization stands, ultimately, upon the corpses of countless unborn. So, Mother wanted to create a place that wouldn't be left behind by any era, at least a place where such a possibility existed. Once again, the baton swept through the second and third floors. The era of warriors and heroes. A world where one can validate their life by cutting something. Stretching like a salmon swimming upstream against the sand waterfall, the baton touched the 10th floor. The era of priests and shrine maidens. A world where those who have been cut can receive comfort. Eventually, the baton paused once at the 11th floor. So, if the 1st to the 10th floors were the Golden Age, the 11th to 20th floors correspond to the Silver Age. Silver. You encountered the Ejim Empire here, right? Other towers also face a different world, from the 11th to 20th floors. A different world. A complete other. A place with no points of contact with you from beginning to end. However, as it's still below the 50th floor, it's not a complete other world, but rather a world that has once perished, that you encounter. The baton began to move again. The age of travelers. In the ruins of destroyed kingdoms, you can contemplate what kind of lives these people led. 12th floor, 13th floor, 14th floor. The age of generals. The age of merchants. The age of soldiers. The baton, moving against the waterfall of sand, eventually reached the 20th floor. Now, from here begins the Steel Age. In our tower, it was a grand library. Yes. Hamustra was like a Zhuge Liang figure. Mother used to say that the more you delve into it, the richer the taste becomes. It seemed incredibly pitiful, but when I recalled Hamustra's face, curiously, any sympathy flew away like a wild bird. How about other towers? Many are also under Hamustra. Next most common are Mushiana and Mayhos. Very occasionally, Babbitt takes charge too. Even that fox around your neck took charge once. I was tempted to object to the part about Babbitt being in charge, but I'll choose the path of reacting blandly, like, wow, the fox, you say. MHM. And I choose not to react. The lady kept her word. She moved on with the explanation. Those who realize the cost of living during the Golden Age learn how to deal with others in the Silver Age. And finally, in the Steel Age, they come to meet the king of their own world. King. Anastasia's voice asking if I was ready to be our king suddenly echoed in my mind. So, from there, only the high rankers can participate in the conquest. Yes. If you want to call yourself the king of a world, you first have to represent that world. In that sense, the Sword Emperor also became a king, didn't he? Hey, zombie. You just called me Sword Emperor again, but does that emperor sound like some kind of title to you? Bei Hurayong said. And I responded before the words even fully reached my brain and ears. Do you know the Chinese character for Mad Dog Emperor? I didn't know it either until I looked it up. You found a character that, like your skull in Unicode, would probably break and show up as. So it would be written as sword. Looks like some kind of clickbait. I really want to beat you until you become rice cake. I awkwardly scratched the back of my head. The lady waited until our joking was over and then said. And then the 30th floors. Bronze Age. Here, you all. We have children. The lady smiled slightly. Yes. Although many towers interpret it simply as acquiring those below. I lowered my head. It was because the gray spider came to mind. But anyway, I seem to understand the structure. From the Golden Age, yourself. From the Silver Age, others. From the Steel Age, those above. From Bronze Age, those below. Yes. And then the 40th floors. The Stone Age. The Stone Age. Here, you all become the one being evaluated. I don't need to explain more about this, do I? Yes. I've already gone over it once when we had the last vote. Yes. This way, floors 1 to 49 form one cycle. And then, the next step is to repeat this cycle on a deeper level. Mom likes music, you see. Echoing the same words as the Wand of Ages, the lady's baton swiftly pointed to the 50th floor. From this cycle onward, a more aggressive meaning is added. The 50th floor functions not as a sanctuary but as a complete, stronghold, forward base, and the 60th floors involve serious confrontations with other worlds. The 70th floors were the afterlife. Indeed. That also means above, in some sense. Yes. Screaming Sky, by now you should also understand what the 80th floors signify. Yes. I nodded. I understand now. I also finally realize why the cleared floors remain in place, allowing others to pass through them. It's to ensure that no era disappears. Correct? Thank you for the intriguing explanation. However, I still haven't heard the most important thing. I looked directly at the lady who walks the mirage. So, what exactly are the 9 keys you're asking to be gathered? There are hints in everything I've said so far. The daughter of the tower master smiled broadly and spun around. Screaming Sky, look back at the worlds you've passed through. Examine. Look at what you've left behind as you've climbed the tower, the path you've lived up to now. Eyes resembling the tower master's, yet different, a purplish hue, looked at me. The keys to the 100th floor are right there. Indeed. And finally, I realized. From the 90th to the 99th floors, it's not about ascending. Yes. The lady who walks the mirage snapped her fingers. In the midst of the 90th floor, the sand waterfall split to the sides, revealing stairs. The stairs, however, were directed downwards. It's time to start descending. Chapter 385, The Garden of Time 1. 1. The waterfall of sand split left and right, revealing the stairs. I began to descend slowly. Thud, thud. The stairs, made of an unknown material, supported me sturdily. With every step I took, a rebounding sound reverberated through the air. The place where I had spoken with the lady was on the 90th floor. Naturally below it was the 89th floor, which was my sanctuary. The Garden of Withered Flowers. I stepped into that place. Retainers of the Death King family, who took on the role of gardeners, were moving around. All were neatly dressed in uniforms designed by the exclusive tailor of the Duke Ivantia and woven by the mermaids of the Aegean Empire with water thread. In their hands were scissors, shovels, watering cans, and other essentials for tending to the garden. Eek! Seeing Sylvia approaching with garden scissors in her hand, I hurriedly hid behind a rock. Death King, what are you doing? The lady looked at me as if she was seeing something curious and asked. I scratched the back of my head sheepishly. Well, after all the putting on all sorts of airs and even cutting my hair and getting ready to go up, coming back down so soon would quite be a bit embarrassing to hear them say back already. Oh. I stopped mid-sentence and closed my mouth. The state of my voice. What came out of my mouth was merely a whisper produced by moving my lips, or rather, a sound that seemed to be heard, yet not heard, as if imagined in my mind. That wasn't all. Stepping back a bit, I realized that I couldn't hear my footsteps either. No matter how many steps I took, it was the same. Until a moment ago, the floor had returned sounds appropriate for my weight with a thud, thud, but now it made no noise at all. I then jumped on the spot. Neither the sound of jumping nor the thud when landing was heard. Not only sounds, but not a single grain of sand or a leaf stirred. Could it be? Yep. Exactly that could it be. The lady smiled brightly. Only then did I realize that her voice and movements also had no effect on the surroundings. And then I realized. Right now, you and I are in the same state as the Sword Emperor, aren't we? Yes. That's right. The lady nodded her head. I moved my body around curiously and looked at Sylvia, who was approaching. And that means. Sigh. Sylvia sighed right in front of my nose. It's been roughly 2 hours since the family head went up. As expected. Sylvia was completely unaware of my presence. This is crazy. Geez. He struggled to go up as if there was something to gain. Sylvia squatted on the floor and grumbled while vigorously digging the soil with a planting shovel. Someone responded to Sylvia's words. Ugger, Grand Chamberlain. What if someone hears this gossip? A Burka, dressed as a gardener, walked over carrying a large bucket on his bald head and made that remark. Sylvia shrugged her shoulders. Humph. Except for you, there's absolutely no one listening. Of course I'm gossiping after taking care of that much groundwork. Ugher. Are you sure about that? Of course, of course. I'm someone who played the noble lady role twice at that Sormwin Academy and even managed to take down the Duke Ivantia. What does that mean? It means my intuition is max level. Sylvia said this with a thoroughly boastful attitude. When I'm right here in front of you listening. It was a moment as pitiful as Sylvia herself, but that must mean my stealth function was perfect. Anyway, this is interesting. I circled around Sylvia and Aberka. I tried walking normally, walking on my hands, flipping through the air, and even dancing the Cossack dance. Beihurayung occasionally showed an embarrassed expression. Zombie. Why are you drooling like a yellow dog that's seen a bone from charcoal grilled ribs? Thanks for feeling that way. I was struggling to learn how to harness my aura when you were doing exactly this kind of nonsense. That's exactly how I felt when you did it. Oh, you little bastard. I didn't realize that. Now that I know, I'm deeply reflecting on it, but apart from that, just because I did it, should you be doing the same? It's always the responsibility of juniors and disciples to break the chain of evil. I wanted to break that chain of evil too. But I didn't have the power to do it. A monster living deep within my heart, a snake coiled around my heart, keeps whispering to me. Why don't you do the same? Are you just going to keep suffering? Go ahead. Now is your chance to pay it back. I keep succumbing to the demon inside me. You could say it's my incompetence and inability. I give up. Victory achieved. Even as we were exchanging such heated words, Aberka and Sylvia showed no signs of noticing us. By this point, even I was starting to feel a bit awkward. Lady. Sword Emperor. So, what should we do now? Where roughly is the key? Well, how about we take a look around at the places that come to mind? The lady said this with a beaming smile. Hearing that in that way with that face, I'm feeling a bit uneasy. I suppressed my uneasiness. I left Aberka and Sylvia, who were still chatting, and began to walk away. Where are you going, screaming sky? Well, what? Didn't you say to look around wherever comes to mind? That's what I'm doing. You're so active. Yep. That's good. That's good. Although that was also an unsettling thing to say, I pressed on. My first thought was to find the director. 2. When I arrived, the director was just giving instructions to Kim Yul. Kim Yul SSI, please gather the gardeners. Will do. Following the director's orders, Kim Yul gathered the gardeners. Estelle was the first to rush over, and the goddess of protection came down flapping her wings. Sylvia and Aberka, who had been loafing in a corner, were also inevitably called and stood before the director. The director said, "Hello. I've been put in charge of managing this garden." The director started talking in his characteristically calm voice. "I am quite lacking. Just by calling you all here together like this, or rather, what's this about a regular assembly? Some of you might be displeased. If that happens, just think, oh, an old person, no, not even old compared to you. Just think of me as someone lacking and pity me, I would appreciate it." The assembled people showed little reaction to his words. More precisely, it wasn't the kind of reaction that was outwardly visible. Just like me. Director. I muttered, feeling moved. Of course, the director did not recognize me. He just continued talking to those in front of him. As you may know, Gongja has gone up to the next floor today. I'm such a novice that I wouldn't even be called a novice if I were a hunter. I probably wouldn't survive if placed on the second floor. So, I don't know what the 90th floor is like. Does anyone here know about it? There was someone who raised their hand. It was Estelle. I know just a little about the 99th floor. I can't share details because of a contract with the tower. Is it dangerous? Yes, very. Estelle said. The director took off his glasses and pressed the bridge of his nose with his thumb and index finger before speaking. Can he return? If the family head decides to return, he could do so immediately. Estelle said this and slightly lowered her head. However, in that case, fundamentally, he wouldn't be able to re-challenge. That's also why most of the notable constellations are stuck without reaching the 100th floor. I see. The director let out a light sigh. It's somewhat reassuring to know he can return whenever he decides to. Yes, I think so too. However, that child will definitely not return. The director's sigh grew heavier. Estelle, the goddess of protection, and a burqa all sighed similarly. Oh, what's this? The Death King family showing such solidarity. He was a child who was quite stubborn from a young age. The director said. Sylvia perked up her ears. How so? Grand Chamberlain. I sense a sense of impropriety from your curiosity. No, Advisor Nim. Aren't you viewing me too harshly? I'm just curious about what kind of person our family's head was, that's all. And you too, Advisor Nim. Aren't you looking quite curious? I merely wish to know more about the family head as an advisor. These vassals. I'm curious too. Ugher. What kind of person was Daddy when he was young? Or did he even have a childhood? This son of mine. Everyone seems curious about Gongja. Well, that's understandable. The director smirked and put his glasses back on. Most of the family members, probably, no, definitely, were eager to dig into my embarrassing past, their eyes gleaming as they looked at the director. Yet, the director proved why he was not just a specialist who had been looking after children for decades. Perhaps we should continue this story at the next assembly.
Ah!
The vassals made a disappointed sound right when their curiosity was piqued. It's all right. Please wait patiently. The director said with a smile. We'll be facing each other here for a long time. With that, the assembly ended. Watching the gardeners disperse with regretful faces, I raised my hand to wipe my forehead. I need to get out of here soon, preferably today. Even so, you don't want your embarrassing past revealed in front of everyone, right? Yes. So. The key. I looked around, but nothing caught my eye. I even searched the director's pockets just in case, but it was the same. There's nothing here? It seems not. Not here. The lady said this with a grin, her tone stirring unease. Then, as if to drive the point home, the Sword Emperor's voice came. Zombie. Yes? I turned to look at the Sword Emperor. And saw him making a pitiful expression. Hang in there. Oh. Sword Emperor Nim. What does that face mean? What does it look like? It looks shitty.
Yeah.
Hey, no. Wait a moment. Be a bit angrier, why don't you? What's that about? Are you upset because I joked earlier? If that's it, no, really, why that face? Rather mock me, what on earth? The Sword Emperor said nothing more. He just looked at me with a face that seemed to pity something pitiable. This is like a creeping unease, crawling up like the smell of dung in a field.
Ugh.
I clapped my hands with a smack. Then, I took a deep breath and started walking. Anyway, it's not around the director, huh? Then it must be over there. My sanctuary is a world of its own, but it's not that vast since it was newly created. By searching each suspicious area one by one, I hoped to find whatever was key. That was the plan. To speak plainly, it was a mistaken thought. 3. My sanctuary, the garden of withered flowers. Squatting by the sea where red waves crashed, I spoke with a haggard face. I was wrong. I'm not even sure if it's really a haggard face. My reflection isn't seen on the surface of the seawater. And it wasn't just because the sea of my sanctuary was red. I had even set up a greenhouse for the warmth-needing flowers, but my reflection did not appear on the greenhouse glass either. Cool. You really are quick-witted, zombie. The Sword Emperor sat cross-legged next to me, picking at his teeth with the tip of his fingernail. To realize that in just 1 week. Indeed. It had already been a week since I entered this place, which should be called the 91st floor, not the 89th. No. Why isn't there even a single clue? I exclaimed with a fiery spirit. Exclaimed? Damn. Even that feels ambiguous here where I can't use my actual voice. Is it like the feeling that my very existence is ambiguous? Like the expression a seal or a Shiba Inu usually wears? I thought there would be something next to the director. Or maybe when I went to the first lily of the valley flowers I planted, the surroundings would start twinkling. But this. Do you know how I feel right now? It feels like I've been thrown into an unfinished test map where the event processing isn't done. That was what the lady said as she leapt next to me. That's how some climbers describe it. Who is that climber? Mayhos. The very constellation known as the warhorse of the eternal plains. That person speaks like that. Screaming Sky doesn't like treating the inside of the tower like a game, so you might get angry at that comparison. Yes. No. I understand the feeling well. Sword Emperor Nim, you know it too, right? Of course, I know, zombie. Why wouldn't I? The Sword Emperor lay sprawled out, supporting his head with his interlocked fingers. In the sky, stained red by the broken sunset, angular clouds were floating by. I've been dealing with this crap for 140 years. Chapter 386, The Garden of Time, 2. 4. 140 years. I had heard about a similar length of time before. When you debated with my master, you mentioned enduring alone for 130 years. Was that what this was about? Ah, exactly that. That carefree voice. It felt as though wind was leaking from my heart just listening to it. My goodness. So, Sword Emperor sir. No, suddenly, I thought that I could fail around the 99th floor as well. The conversation I had with the Sword Emperor in the Truth Heaven suddenly flashed through my mind. Sword Emperor Nim. But even someone like you died at the 99th floor. Sword Emperor had shown a peculiar reaction to that statement. Well, death. I remember him repeating that. And the kind of questions and answers that followed. What is on the 99th floor? At that time, Sword Emperor had not given a substantial answer. Outwardly, he said, I just don't want to tell you, but surely, that couldn't have been everything. Can you still not tell me? To that question, Sword Emperor had said this. Let's walk a bit. I blinked my eyes. Before I knew it, Sword Emperor had risen from his seat and was looking at me with the same expression as that time. Follow me, kid. And Sword Emperor began walking just like that time. Since entering this stage that should be called the 91st floor, my body had lost its weight. The world no longer tried to hold me down, and no matter how hard I stamped my feet, no sound of footsteps followed. It felt as though I had been isolated from the world. Thus, during this week that had passed, I gradually stopped performing the act of walking. It was more comfortable to float around as Bae Hurayon usually did. Mayho said it looked like you had TCL at it. Gongja said. I'm not exactly sure what TCL means, but I can guess. Now, with gravity not working, all physical forces had lost their meaning. If I wanted, I could pass through floors and walls. Therefore, I understood how difficult the act Sword Emperor was performing. This walking naturally really was. It felt like an incredible skill in the truth heaven, but now that I was in the same situation, I truly understood. What are you doing? Aren't you coming? Sword Emperor glanced at me casually, his demeanor like that of casually looking back during a walk. I suddenly realized that this was an important moment. Please wait a moment. Instead of floating around, I said that and gathered my thoughts. I first tried to place my soles on the ground. Still, there was no feeling of contact, but I tried my best to stand up naturally. Sword Emperor waited quietly. He neither urged me nor offered advice. Yet, I immediately knew that what I had done was not really standing, but something else entirely strange. Just a moment more. Take your time. Yes. I took a serious stance and delved into thought. How do you stand? Even to myself, the thought seemed ridiculous. But a stronger conviction seized me. This is important. This moment was important. To stand, first, put your soles on the ground. Then the ground will support you, but now, there's no ground to support me. So. A fluffy mass seemed to float around my head. It seemed graspable yet elusive, and I took a deep breath. Did I? No. Of course, that was just pretending to breathe. I focused my consciousness. I am now practically no different from a ghost. Naturally, there's nothing like air for me to inhale. And that means. At that moment, a new question arose in my mind. Wait. If there's no air, how can I hear sound? I realized that this was a very strange phenomenon. It's a common contradiction pointed out in sci-fi movies, the booming sound spreading through the vacuum of space. Strange. Indeed, when speaking with Bae Hurayon or Gongja, who were on the same level, the sound felt similar to imagining it. However, voices like Sylvia's or the director's had sounded just like normal voices. Sound is transmitted through the vibration of air, but there is nothing like air that can affect me now. That means I shouldn't be able to hear sounds. So. The moment I realized that. Silence enveloped me. It was a silence akin to stepping into outer space, no, even more ancient than that. A primordial stillness from a time when time did not exist and hence space had no meaning. Sword Emperor, who had switched his arms from behind his back to crossed, chuckled softly. However, that laughter merely rose in my mind and faded away, not disturbing the stillness I was experiencing. I was completely enraptured by this pure white moment. Pure white. And soon, I realized that was also strange. It can't be white, by the same logic, it can't be black either. This wasn't an abstract notion that silence can't have color. It was much more concrete and fundamental. How am I seeing this landscape right now? Color is a wave of light. Just as sound needs air to propagate because it is the vibration of air, something needs to exist, light, beforehand to see anything. But I am unaffected by anything now. No gravity. No resistance. No physical forces affect me. Is light special, an exception perhaps? That can't be. In games, light might be classified as a special attribute, but light is just one aspect of physical phenomena. I, who wielded a holy sword named after light, knew that fact well. Then, just as I shouldn't be able to hear anything, I shouldn't be able to see anything. The moment I felt that. And there was no light. Perfect darkness. A pure absence of light engulfed me. 5. Around the time I was born, Earth was a shining star. There were cities everywhere. A little walk from one city quickly led to the next. Although the number of people was slowly decreasing, the number of buildings being erected was actually increasing. It was as if, leaving humans aside, the cities themselves were busily breeding on their own. Every building overflowed with light. Even after people disappeared, the light remained like debt. It should have been fitting to describe them as eerie ghost towns or extinguished ruins, yet somehow that logic did not fit. Someone called it a singularity. But many more knew it was merely the uncontrolled proliferation of cancer cells. There was a time when the night sky was much darker than it is now. The director said so, but as a child, I couldn't imagine that landscape. Throughout my life, the night sky was always shrouded in a misty haze that shimmered purple. This star is suffering from a fever. Thus, the first darkness I saw was not in the night but in the water. And more so, within the hearts of people. But that was then. I murmured without realizing. This is darkness. True darkness wasn't black. It simply had nothing given to it. Blank space. Empty space. Thus, it felt blindingly white at times and profoundly black at others, but it was definitely neither. Looking at the empty thing, I gazed upon a world that had not yet been filled with anything. It's beautiful. Yes, it is, Gongja. Somewhere, I felt Sword Emperor's response. What is filled will only empty, which is beautiful. Likewise, what is empty can only be filled, which is also beautiful. I turned my head in the direction of that response. You fool. Do you know what ridiculous thing you're doing right now? Indeed. I groaned. I don't have a head right now. Right. And yet you turn your head. Well, it's not bad, but doing it unconsciously like that is no different from before you saw this darkness, isn't it? Sword Emperor said, with a sound like his robe fluttering. No, it wasn't actually a sound. Move with awareness. Only then can you move properly. Be conscious and feel. Only then can you truly perceive. I nodded. No. Before that, I first created myself. Kim Gongja. Physical age, about 25. The actual time I had to experience, roughly 1,000, no, roughly 10,000. No. Words like roughly, about, and approximately won't do. Exactly. I think of myself, imagine myself. I begin to recall Kim Gongja, from birth to this moment, without adding or subtracting anything. A mind-bending task. It was never an easy task. The voices from the tower, they aren't just automatically operated by the system, perhaps. Yes. It's manual. But it wasn't impossible either. Death King. Even if it might be simultaneous events for you, for me, it's just a task that needs to be handled one by one. Inefficiency only occurs when time and space are limited. The concept of inefficiency does not exist. Baron Gu 1.
Ha!
I thought about the character I had once been possessed by and the tasks she was assigned. Compared to that amount, revisiting my own life was nothing more than a grain of sand. Sand. Fox Nim. Even the moments when my memories were jumbled by Fox Nim had become a reference now. And it was not only that. Nether world. The space I had arrived at when I died resembled this place. Sanctuary. The experience of initially building and filling the empty world of the sanctuary proved useful in many ways. And above all, Master. That season, so achingly white, and this darkness, they shared similarities. Enveloped in darkness, I recalled myself, imagined, created, thought, and then. Eventually, I opened my eyes. I breathed. The temperature of the breath, its contours, direction, pitch, and volume, all these were felt. Thoroughly. A shiver ran down my neck. Yes, I had a neck now, it shivered. Ha, ha. Saliva flowed from my lips. I realized that I lacked the vocabulary to describe this sensation. Simply put, it was due to a lack of experience. Despite having died and lived, experiencing countless lives in place of others, I couldn't properly explain this sensation. I couldn't intuit the state of my own body. It wasn't that I couldn't feel, rather, I felt too intensely. Sensation is supposed to distinguish between oneself and the outside, but overly sharp senses blur that boundary. Sometime. Somewhere. Remember well. Sword Emperor's voice came through. That is what seeing is. Thump. With the sound of my heart beating, the darkness faded. Light burst forth, the dam broke, the boundaries of the world were seared by the blazing light from afar, and thus, the darkness faded. Yes. And thus, I found myself back in my sanctuary, in the Garden of Withered Flowers, on what corresponds to the 80th through 89th floors, and also the 91st floor. With his arms crossed, Sword Emperor greeted me. Let's walk a bit. As if urging what he had urged just a moment ago. No, certainly, it must have been something that happened just a moment ago. Yes. Shaking my still dazed head, I nodded. Let's walk. Slowly, I stretched my foot towards the ground, beside Sword Emperor. Thud. I stepped down. Thud. I started walking with Sword Emperor. Thud. Chapter 387, The Garden of Time, 3. 6. Leaving the Garden of Withered Flowers, Sword Emperor slowly strolled. Under the gradually setting sunset, in a place where the dead slept as flowers, the Sword Emperor said this. Well done. Instead of retorting back asking what nonsense he's trying to say, I said this. Thank you. Instead of asking why I was so compliant, as if I had eaten something wrong, the Sword Emperor said. It's nice that even the soil is dead. On the day I awakened my chi, I placed a grain of soil on my palm and observed it closely. When I focused my eyes and ears, I found that soil, seemingly quiet, is actually quite noisy. On that tiny grain, inside it, how many things were busily competing. The Sword Emperor crouched down and caressed the rotten earth with his fingertips. Though his fingertips merely brushed over the soil, a coincidental breeze scattered the grains of dirt, creating a scene as if the ground was caressed by the Sword Emperor's touch. I saw and heard more things that day than any other day before. But the soil here is truly quiet. And that silence is what the flowers here need. The Sword Emperor straightened his back and looked back at me. Even before feeling such true tranquility, Gongja, I am truly amazed that you had already created such a place. I did not banter this time either. I simply nodded quietly once. Thank you. Yes. We walked in silence for a while. The area we were walking through was known as the summer zone. In a place where the air flowed lukewarm like breath under a flipped blanket, Estelle was preparing to call the rain with her hands clasped together. This too is nice. Yes. I nodded. Passing by Estelle, who began to cry, the Sword Emperor said. Gongja. Yes. You remember when I said that if you can't ascend to the 99th floor, old man Marcus might climb it instead? Of course, I remembered his words. Do you remember what I added then? I certainly remembered. It's funny to say instead, isn't it? The old man is not my substitute. The Sword Emperor nodded. Nevertheless, I believe you also know what I meant by that. Indeed. So. The Sword Emperor asked. What do you think I meant by that? It was a topic I pondered over several times anyway. So the answer flowed easily. Simply that you believe in me, so cheer up? Or was it out of consideration that Sword Saint could do better than me, so it's okay to rest if it's hard? It was neither, right? I walked alongside the Sword Emperor and looked at him. My steps had become as natural as the words flowing from my mouth. Because I also remember what you added next. Frankly speaking, it's okay, even if you fail. Belief means thinking that the other person will give their best. And the best isn't something decided by others but can only be determined by oneself. So, a relationship based on trust means that each decides their best and accepts the other's decisions. That's all there is to it. Nothing more. The important thing here is not that it's okay to fail. It's the part where right after saying you believe in me, you explain to me what belief means. Therefore, I was able to respond like this. Either way, it doesn't matter, that's what you meant. Whether I overcome this ordeal. Whether I fail and become a prisoner of the eternal desert. Whether Sword Saint carries my will and climbs to the 99th floor. Or even if he also encounters an unexpected accident and becomes a visitor of no return. Really, either way, it doesn't matter because that's what you meant. The Sword Emperor did not stop his steps. Just like in the world of true heaven, his pace only quickened. Unlike before, when I had to grit my teeth and run to catch up with him, I was able to continue speaking by his side. And it's not because you don't trust me. Nor is it because you don't trust the Sword Saint. I continued speaking. You trust me. And just as much, you trust an old man who abandoned everything he had achieved to enter the tower. You trust the Sword Saint. And just as much, you trust a jobless man who fled to the tower at a young age and lives silently alone in an alley on the first floor. You trust the gray spider. Again, just as much, you would trust the resistance that was trampled by the magic tower. You trust the assistant writer. And once more, surprisingly, even a minor villain who harassed the resistance of the magic tower and complained about the magic tower while filling his lust for power, you would trust someone like Karamu. You often say you are great. Sometimes you boast so much that I feel like hitting you. But your boastfulness differs from the Flame Emperor. It didn't simply mean that the Sword Emperor was truly great and the Flame Emperor was not. Even the Flame Emperor before his regression was undoubtedly a capable person. Whether it was the Sword Emperor, Flame Emperor, or even myself, the aspect of claiming one can do and then doing it was not different. But there was a crucial difference. The Flame Emperor thought he alone was special. Only I can do it. I am special by myself. Only he can do it, and so others, even if they were to be reborn, couldn't do it like him. That was the driving force that made the Flame Emperor who he was. I looked at the Sword Emperor. But you, Sword Emperor Nim, on the other hand, believe you are also special. In other words, you too can do it. You could be special. There's no reason others can't do what you were able to do. Therefore, you might say, you believe in every person in this world. That's why you said that then. If not me, then the Sword Saint. If even the Sword Saint fails, then Anastasia or the Gray Spider. If they find it impossible, then someone unknown among all people, anyway, someone will eventually reach the 99th floor. Anyone has the potential. Some time had passed since the Sword Emperor and I walked past Estelle. During that time, we strolled through this garden at a brisk pace. Over fields. Over mountains. Above seas. Only the capable will succeed, the incapable will not, and people never change, are things you say when you live shortly and can't look far ahead. And thus far away. A land where red rain fell, lay before us. If it makes no sense to say, that person could do it, but you cannot, obviously the opposite, I could do it, but others cannot, doesn't make sense either. Yes. Before we knew it, we had made a complete round of this world. That's a fair attitude. Raindrops pierced through us, hitting the ground. In reality, isn't that true for you? I gazed at that redness, the requiem for nameless deaths. Now that I could truly see, in the genuine sense, in that landscape that came in so vividly, the rain felt like it was slowly rising up from below rather than pouring down from above. Gongja, you sometimes recall those days spent in that tiny room. And then you say, how did I get here? Others too, if they had seen you during your time clipping newspaper scraps about.
Yo! So? Ha!
Would have clicked their tongues and said, how can there be such an idiot? That guy won't succeed at anything. You shouldn't become like that. However, it felt not like walking in the rain but stepping into water. The Sword Emperor did not stop walking. As if the positions of air and water had switched, red bubbles infinitely burst around us, bubbling, bubbling. And yet, here you are now. Thump. My heart throbbed. People change. Given even a small catalyst, they transform. Isn't that what you've been proving every time you turned back a day? Just like when I was young and received praise from the director for the first time. Was that all? Even the gray spider, who had lived unchanged for 1,000 years, changed. Because of you? Of course. But was it something only you could do? Certainly, it wasn't a remark that could be taken as pure praise. If interpreted maliciously, it could very well be so. It could be seen as nagging, typical of old-timers asking why you can't be like them, or paradoxically as a declaration that only oneself is special. But I knew that the Sword Emperor did not intend it that way. Perhaps that's why, the first skill I received when I entered the tower was this. When there's no malice, when no hidden motives permeate, when words purely function as words, the Sword Emperor's statement bore exactly the literal meaning. Skill card open. The Sword Emperor raised his hand. From the tattered hem of his robe, a skill card slipped out. On that skill card, it was written. Plus. You can become just like me. Rank F. Effect, you can see all the skills your opponent possesses. However, opponents who have been defeated by you can copy one of your skills to make it their own. Opponents who have already lost to you once are excluded from this skill effect. Additionally, which skill gets copied is determined randomly. Plus. As if possessed, I raised one hand. Skill card open. I took out and looked at the first skill I had. Plus. I want to become just like you. Rank S+. Effect, automatically activates when killed by an enemy. You copy one skill from the enemy that killed you, making it your own. You cannot copy from the same opponent more than once. Which skill gets copied is determined randomly. However, you die. Plus. The two cards touched. An F rank skill and an S+ rank skill. The two skills mirrored each other like facing mirrors. Between the two skills, in a world of similarities, there were the Sword Emperor and I, we were facing each other. I said. Sword Emperor. Yes. What is your sanctuary like? I said, standing in my sanctuary. Even Constellation Killer had a sanctuary. And since you are now on the 99th floor, you must have created a sanctuary too. I am curious about what your sanctuary is like. The Sword Emperor raised his hand. His robe fluttered, rippled. And then, a world unfolded before us. In a forest with faint sunlight, the morning glory stretched its neck even longer. To half the size, bending their heads halfway, again to half the size, the crown of the morning glory flower shrunk and shrunk as much as morning turned to midday, midday to evening, the sun dying in the sunset. As the sun grew tired. In a rain-sparse wilderness at night, sunflowers spread their petals wider and, in that season of sparse rain and thin sunlight, those who could not blossom and perished, the flowers of people and the people of flowers, along with the 10 million flowers that they tried to embrace, the 10 million flowers that they could embrace, the 10 million flowers that they were meant to embrace. Morning glory flowers, spinning top flowers, frost flowers, peony flowers, rose flowers, globe amaranth flowers. The world. A man seated in lotus position was there. It was a man dressed in tattered robes. Seated in the lotus position, with a sword as tall as himself planted into a flower bed blooming with hundreds of millions of flowers beside him, there sat a man. I knew that man well, very well. I had seen him. Watched him. Countless times, yet. This was the first time I saw that man, who was not translucent, in this way. Sword Emperor. The reason I couldn't say that, might be because I am not actually here right now. Nevertheless, I saw him. I could see him. I could only know that he was showing this because he wanted to. The man, the Sword Emperor, with his eyes closed, without opening his eyes, simply quietly opened his lips. And, spoke. Come. Kim Gongja. That was the first time I heard his voice. Here. On the 99th floor. I will be waiting for you. He was waiting for me. Chapter 388, The Time He Waited, The Time He Walked, 1. In the beginning, it was there. There was nothing else. It was wholly alone. Thus, it could bear eternity on its own. Being able to and having to are not the same. As much as it did not need anything else to be itself, it thought that it did not need to be alone either. To become two from one, it had to be split. It chose to be cut as well. With a great sword forged from itself, it split itself horizontally. The lower part sank and became the earth, and the upper part rose and became the sky. To commemorate the birth of heaven and earth, people named the moment the first strike occurred, the year of the sword. 1. Sylvia. Formerly the Lady of the Golden Silk at Sormwin Academy, currently the Grand Chamberlain and Gardener of the Garden of Withered Flowers under the Death King family. She was oversleeping again today. Have you seen? Family head, no, Kim Gongja. This is my true power. She must be having a pleasant dream. Right now, when she's starting to get confused whether her family name is Evanale or Ebonale, dreams are the only drug this world allows her. But of course, the bizarre and nightmarish world created by the ruthless evil god did not wish for her to indulge in such deep sleep. Sylvia. The owner of the voice waking Sylvia from her deep slumber was a gentle-looking woman. Once the immortal dragon emperor, once the goddess of protection, once the guardian sword of the empire, once a sword called Shiny, and so on. This woman, whose career comprised various unrelated and disconnected experiences, was named Shiny. Currently, she spends her time in the Garden of Withered Flowers drinking tea with Estelle, her former enemy who had driven her own country to destruction, or, if it were to be titled, it might be called, I Was Bullied at School but Reincarnated in Another World, Met a Goddess, and walked the path of a godslayer with an unrivaled skill of forgetting memories. One of those was waking up the oversleeping Sylvia. Sylvia, it's time to get up. Sylvia. 5 minutes. Sylvia said, clutching her goblin doll pillow tightly. Just 5 more minutes, please just shut up and wait 5 more minutes. Not getting angry was one of Shiny's virtues. She silently waited another 5 minutes before speaking. Sylvia, 5 minutes have passed. You waited 5 minutes. Impressive. If you can wait 5 minutes, you can wait 10 minutes. I believe in your will to wait. Being able to persuade it logically was also one of Shiny's strengths. She waited another 10 minutes before speaking again. Sylvia, 10 minutes have passed. Nya. It's time to wake up. Why? You need to work. What if? I don't want to work. Sylvia showed one hand while burying her face in the pillow. Think about it. Goddess of protection. Shiny. Sparkly. It's not sparkly, it's shiny. It's basically the same anyway, just think about it. If I don't want to work and have such a golden will, what will you do? Will you force me to work? Sylvia then spread just one finger and flicked it back and forth. No, no, no. That won't happen, it won't. Sparkly. I am not sparkly. Shiny, you will just let me sleep. And you will gladly do my work instead. Why would that be? Could it also be one of Shiny's virtues that she responds calmly even to such nonsensical blabber? No, perhaps it might actually be a flaw. Either way, Sylvia answered in a dreamy voice, as if she was half asleep. Because you are a goddess. Please help, goddess. Since you look somewhat like Verdandi anyway, do something worth your appearance. This was Sylvia.
Bye.
Sylvia. Sylvia didn't respond any further. Her raised hand also dropped sharply. It's basically the same anyway, just think about it. If I don't want to work and have such a golden will, what will you do? Will you force me to work? Sylvia then spread just one finger and flicked it back and forth. No, no, no. That won't happen, it won't. Sparkly. I am not sparkly. Shiny, you will just let me sleep. And you will gladly do my work instead. Why would that be? Could it also be one of Shiny's virtues that she responds calmly even to such nonsensical blabber? No, perhaps it might actually be a flaw. Either way, Sylvia answered in a dreamy voice, as if she was half asleep. Because you are a goddess. Please help, goddess. Since you look somewhat like Verdandi anyway, do something worth your appearance. This was Sylvia.
Bye.
Sylvia. Sylvia didn't respond any further. Her raised hand also dropped sharply. Even their personalities seemed similar as inferred from their way of speaking. Pain without injury. Jaya. Sylvia jumped like a cat that had encountered a cucumber. The ability of the Sword of Compassion, inflicting pain, had instantly awakened her. What is this? This is abuse of Sylvia. Are you awake now? Awake? No. It feels more like I've been startled so badly I could never meet sleep again. What is this really? Can't you treasure Sylvia a bit more? Shall I take it a step further? I'll go wash up and come out. Sylvia hurried off to the bathroom. Shortly after, a refreshed Sylvia emerged, and there was Shiny, back in her original form, having prepared a meal. Sylvia gobbled up a bowl of egg rice, ranting as she ate. Do you know? It's because of such actions, trying not to dirty your own hands, that the Egyptian Empire ended up doing those things to the advisors. Reflect on this. Indeed. Could that be related? Shiny grimaced with a gloomy expression. Sylvia stared at her with her mouth agape, then banged the spoon against the bowl making a thumping sound. What the? You were the one who summoned him and then got sealed by him. And what is this? Could that be related stuff? But still. Stop with the but stills and don't blame yourself. I'm just rambling out of irritation. Are gods that naive? After inhaling the egg rice and gulping down the soup, Sylvia finished her meal swiftly and stretched. Meanwhile, Shiny quietly waited beside her, still with a dark expression. Sylvia clicked her tongue and then said while donning her gardener's attire. By the way, what exactly were you fighting against? What? Whether it was Kim Yul or Kim Yul Mucha. There must have been a reason for the summoning. You even fought for a while after summoning him. What was the reason? I'm curious. Well. Sylvia was oversleeping so frequently that the director changed the assembly time to night. Estelle fumed, complaining that it inconvenienced the elders, and Kim Yul stood silently by her side, exerting silent pressure on Sylvia, but Sylvia was the embodiment of this country's spirit of not succumbing to unjust power, and thus she endured calmly. In short, there was still plenty of time until the assembly. Sylvia, carrying a shovel, and Shiny, with a bucket full of sunset, walked to the garden talking. Shiny answered. I fought another version of myself. Oh my. You were having such a friendly time drinking tea with the advisor. And even that altar form from earlier, when did the venomous virus reach there? No. Really? I really did fight another version of myself. Shiny, uncharacteristically, flailed her hands in agitation. Sylvia looked at Shiny suspiciously, then crossed her arms and said. Explain. Whether because she was too kind, or because she was shocked by the startling allegation of being infected by the venomous virus, Shiny willingly explained the fight. According to Kim Yul, who was there at the garden, the explanation went like this. Shiny was split into two at that time. There was a bad Shiny and a good Shiny. Are you a slime? Recently regaining his emotions, Kim Yul wasn't as forbearing as Shiny. He shot a finger rubber band gun at Sylvia. Sylvia felt a physical sting. Ouch! What are you doing? Grand Chamberlain. It's okay to insult me. But do not insult my former comrade. That truly tests my patience. Oh, right. But, family's shadow, just saying, who was it that brutally struck from behind the very comrade you respect so much? Above all, calling her a slime. Whether it's a fish monster or a formidable enemy that can't be defeated without magic and fire, stop using such ambiguous terms. Precise language breeds a clear mind. Sylvia. As a Grand Chamberlain, you are responsible for the cleanliness of the family. You need to be more aware of that. Did you just change the subject? Kim Yul coughed then started flipping through his notebook. Anyway. There are two types of sanctuaries. There are sanctuaries that someone creates, like this sanctuary or the sanctuary of the constellation killer, and there are also sanctuaries that are just born. Oh. The world of Kiamsan, Shiny's world, was, so to speak, a born sanctuary. Everything that exists there came from Shiny's body. The entire mountain range covering the continent was made from the decaying body of a giant dragon. That dragon was also one of Shiny's true forms. Thus, the long fight with herself finally left only two forces of Shiny. I was summoned by the weaker and kinder Shiny to fight against the stronger and evil forces of Shiny. Shiny, intertwining her wings and crossing her arms, added with hums. In a way, it was a process of rebirth. The fight that ultimately determined what kind of being Shiny would become. Just as the family head broke through the trials of the 70th floor to become a complete constellation, Shiny underwent the same process. Then Kim Yul told a lengthy story. How he broke each of the bad Shiny's wings one by one, how he changed the world of Kiamsan during the process, and how he increased the number of people gathering under his and Shiny's banner. It's a story that, if cut out the cruel parts, would perfectly fit a 24-episode animation series to air in the morning. Shiny said with a nostalgic look on her face. Kim Yul tilted his head. Really? I think it sounds like a story that could sell about 100,000 copies if made into an SRPG. Sylvia only made a disgusted expression and didn't comment separately on the self-evaluations of this crazy combo. Kim Yul asked. So, that's all. Is there anything else you're curious about? So, you did change the subject earlier, right? For a moment, rubber band bullets and shovels flew in the air. Anyway, get to work. It's almost mealtime. Yes, yes. Oh, my plight. The three of them then went into tending the garden. While Shiny fluttered about, hanging sunsets and gathering them, Kim Yul trimmed the long protruding rocks by wrapping aura around long pruning shears. Sylvia, crouching down, flipped the soil while grumbling. Really? I also want to fight against myself right now. I'm the unlucky Sylvia, so the lucky Sylvia should knock me down and absorb. Wait, thinking about it, that's annoying too. If there's going to be absorption, I should be the one doing it. I should suck up all of Sylvia's luck and become the true one and only lucky one. Sylvia stopped speaking and closed her mouth. Perhaps even she found her own muttering pitiful? No, that wasn't it. Oh dear. At the end of Sylvia's gaze was a small marigold. She had noticed that its roots were slightly protruding. She cried too much yesterday, not like she's a frog with bulging eyes. Now that I think about it, there was a time when she was a frog. TSK. Sylvia scooped the soil with her shovel to cover the exposed roots, all the while muttering. Family head, hurry back. How long will you leave the flowers and ascend? Naturally, no one responded to her muttering. Shiny and Kim Yul were too far away. Regardless, Sylvia continued to tenderly cover the marigold's roots, muttering. Or perhaps you are already there. With your knack for moving undetected. Maybe hiding there with your invisibility skill.
Oh.
If by any chance you are there, please shake that flower over there. Wow, darn it, that scared me. Sylvia was startled. A sudden breeze had shaken the carrot flower. It really shook. Are you there? Startled by sudden gust, Sylvia barely managed to calm her pounding heart. It couldn't be, if you think about it. Sylvia scratched the back of her head. Damn. Her muttering continued. You're the one who put me in this situation. This condition is, well, it's not bad. Not bad, but especially considering Kim Hwangtae seems to be turning from dried pollock into frozen pollock. I think I'm still better off. Still. Silence. It's not just me you've done this to. Silence. There are many others, so you know. And then. Hurry back. Please. Key formation complete. From somewhere, that announcement echoed. All residents from the 81st to 90th floors remember you. The 91st floor is cleared. The tower's announcement was not heard by Sylvia. What Sylvia heard was simply this. Sylvia, let's go have lunch.
Ah.
Yes. Rising at the sound of Shiny calling her, Sylvia gave the well-covered marigold one last look and stretched. What's for lunch today? Today we're eating out. Let's go to the planetarium.
Ah.
Yes. I understand, well then. Sylvia snapped her fingers. Thanks to the ability given to the vassals of the Death King family, a staircase connected to another layer of the sanctuary appeared. Let's go eat some salad while looking at that infuriating hamster's face. Sylvia, Shiny, and Kim Yul trudged down the stairs. And following them, someone who had heard the tower's declaration also began to descend the stairs. You are entering the 92nd floor.